Brad and Jess have just moved into a very luxurious house. Jess is beside herself. She's been wanting to move into Los Angeles for a while, and now she has a mansion in the city. Even Brad is impressed. It's practically a mansion. Brad goes to close the door, but he is met with a cowboy-looking fellow. He's wearing a black cowhide hat and black leather vest and everything. He is Peter, the man who sold them the house. Brad is nervous and stuttering his words. He's never met him in person. But the cowboy man is very friendly and he congratulates the couple on their new home. Jess comes out to meet him and they all get friendly. Peter spits a mouthful of saliva on the floor like all cowboys do and bids them farewell. Brad finds his wife in the backyard. They embrace and chuckle at what a character Peter is. He's like a man out of time. The backyard is sandy and barren. Jess says she wants to grow things here to represent their growing relationship. Later at night, Jess and Brad discuss finances. He runs a brewery and needs to buy equipment so he can brew in this new city. It seems that there is something watching them from the shadows. The couple is preparing for bed. They discuss some things about their new home. Brad reveals that the spare bedroom is locked for some strange reason. And again, it's as if something is sulking around the corner, watching the couple. The entity inches closer to the bedroom door. It gets so close that the door swings open and the couple is startled. But they dismiss it. Brad jokingly says that it was a ghost and they go to sleep. It is very late now, and Brad is woken up by a loud thud. He grabs a stick and uses his phone as a flashlight to navigate the dark home. He hears another thud and walks towards it. The guest bedroom door unlocks itself. Brad walks through. There are boxes and old furniture all over the place. Brad feels a chill rush down his spine and he chickens out, dropping his phone and leaving it. He very slowly and painstakingly reaches out for his phone through a narrow crack in the door. Once he grabs it, Jess appears behind him and scares him. She has a laugh at him for being so paranoid. He tells her that they may have pests because of the noises he heard. Jess and Brad go back to sleep. Day breaks, and the sunroof vaguely resembles a pair of evil eyes, hinting to the possibility of evil spirits lurking about. Jess is in good spirits. She joyfully dances to music while preparing breakfast for herself and Brad. Jess makes a phone call to Peter. She tells him that they might have mice in the house. Peter seems to know about this. He says that the house has had pest issues in the past. He says he'll give it a look. She hears noise coming from upstairs. She goes to investigate. It's coming from the spare room, and it sounds like someone is in there. Jess tries the handle. She wiggles it, but it is locked. Suddenly, the door unlocks itself, just as it did with Brad. Inside, she finds a mousetrap with a blue feather on the clasp. The door slams shut, locking Jess in. She hears strange whispers in the dark. The food she left on the stove starts to smoke and burn, it even catches fire. Jess frantically tries unlocking the door, but it's no use. Jess finds a black box tucked away in the corner of the room. It seems that they are the belongings of someone. From the looks of it, they were from the distant past. She grabs an old leather journal. It bears strange markings on the leather. There is also a knife, and a coin purse filled with antique coins. The entity finally lets Jess out. The house is filled with smoke. She walks into the smoke and begins coughing violently. It is incredibly hazy and Jess is getting lightheaded. She falls down the stairs with the box in hand. Brad walks in the house to see the disaster taking place. It hasn't even been a whole day since they moved in. Brad puts out the fire and looks for Jess. He finds her unconscious on the stairs, surrounded by the old items. Brad takes care of her, and helps her recover. She tells him what happened, but he has a hard time believing her since the door is locked. Even though he has experienced a similar event the night before. It's late again, and the couple is fast asleep. Brad is having trouble staying asleep. So he goes down for a midnight snack. He sits down to do some work, but the table vibrates. He decides to read the old journal to learn more about this place. The journal is not an ordinary journal at all. It's a book of spells and rituals. Brad reads through the ancient texts. He freaks out and puts everything away. But it seems like he did something. We briefly see a silhouette appear. Peter pays the house a visit. Him and Brad sit down and have a drink. Brad seems strangely intimidated by Peter. Brad reveals that he and Jess have been having some issues because Jess wants to have kids right away, But Brad wants to wait. Peter has been around the block a few times and is very experienced. He gives Brad some advice. Peter is about to leave, but Brad follows him out because he wants to ask about the Book of Spells. It turns out it belongs to Peter's father. Peter's father was a cult member. Peter says he doesn't know anything about it, but he says Brad can keep the book. Later, Brad is reading his emails. The brewery suddenly received $900,000 of funding out of nowhere. The city is paying them for the renovations and equipment. Could it be because of the spell from earlier? Brad and Jess are ecstatic. This money has made their lives a lot easier. The next day, Brad receives a text message from his bank. They're freezing his bank account because of a suspicious charge. When Jess comes home, he asks her about the charge and she immediately gets apologetic. Apparently, Jess has fertility issues, and she needs to have certain procedures done. She has charged $30,000 to their personal credit card for a procedure. Brad starts getting really upset. That was their last credit card. They are completely broke now. Brad storms out, leaving Jess to cry alone. Later on, Brad sits in front of lit candles. The black box is on the table next to him. He prepares a ritual. He draws symbols on the floor. He is clearly in a bad state, as he stumbles to the fridge to grab another beverage. He follows the ritual, and speaks the incantation. The lights start to flicker. This wakes up Jess. She comes down to check it out, and she sees the strange ritual. Brad tries explaining it to her. He says that a few nights before, he accidentally cast a spell that gave them a whole lot of cash. Jess is still clearly creeped out. But she takes a few coins into her hand, and they give her a vision of the future. She sees herself taking care of a little baby. She is now fully on board. She provides blood for the ritual, and Brad places the coins according to the instructions. But the ritual didn't work. At least not yet. The next day, they are scrambling to find investors since they have no personal money. As a last-ditch effort, they decide to invite Peter to dinner. He seems very rich. Peter arrives, and Brad welcomes him in. Brad lies and says that Jess is feeling ill. But Peter is happy to enjoy a succulent meal. Brad begins pitching his business to Peter. Peter listens, but he doesn't seem too interested. And Brad isn't giving a very good pitch. He finally gets to the point, and asks Peter to join in as an investor, but Peter just laughs at him. Peter doesn't want to invest because he doesn't need any more money. Peter is insulted that Brad invited him solely to sell him on his business, and he gets up to leave. Peter is angry. He tells Brad off, and he even kicks them out. He tells him to pack up, which is a very strange overreaction. Peter goes to open the front door but it is locked. Brad gets an ominous look on his face. He turns around and grabs a glass bottle. He knocks Peter out with it. Jess hears Brad dragging Peter, and she freaks out when she sees him. Brad says that he had no choice since Peter was kicking them out. Peter starts slowly waking up, and Brad urges Jess to keep it together. And to give him something to tie up the cowboy. Brad is ruthless, and he kicks Peter in the face to knock him out again. Peter wakes up a while later. He is tied up and gagged in the spare room. Brad is over him. He demands $200,000 from Peter. Peter blinks to show compliance. Brad is completely psycho. Brad and Jess go back to drawing symbols on the floor and casting spells. They suddenly hear thuds. A big black box in the spare room begins to violently shake, as if something is trying to escape. They stop the ritual and go to investigate. Peter just stares at the box helplessly. The box bursts open. A creature made of shadow leaps out from inside. Brad and Jess go inside, but it all seems fine. They go to their bedroom and fall asleep. Brad wakes up hours later, and the bed is soaked in blood. Somehow, Jess is bleeding from her upper back. Brad pulls up her shirt to see if there is a wound. The symbol from the spellbook is somehow carved into her back. Brad gets Jess in the shower to clean the wound, and he breaks down crying. Brad reads through the book, trying to find answers for what just happened. He finds a hidden page. It was glued secretly. He gasps as he reads through it. But we don't see what he reads. He looks over at Jess. Brad goes to Peter. He ungags him. Peter begs him not to kill him. Brad doesn't say anything, he just paces around the room maniacally. Brad hunches over. He hypes himself up. Jess wakes up, and finds Brad missing. She goes to the spare room and begs Brad not to kill Peter. She bashes in the door, but it's no use. We see Brad repeatedly stab Peter. Later, Brad is woken up. It's Peter. The ritual has transformed him into a powerful ghost. He speaks with a demonic voice. He taunts and insults Brad. The next morning, Brad comes back with a sack full of cash. They have turned Peter into their lord and they must worship him in exchange for their prosperity. The couple talk and come to terms with the awful situation they are now in. Some time has passed and we see Jess in the backyard. The garden is flourishing. She tends to a flower pot filled with colorful plants. She is also pregnant. Everything seems to be going great. She talks with Brad. Apparently Peter has vanished and they are looking for a new house. They want to leave this madness behind. Jess suddenly sees something in the crib and she gets afraid. Brad gets up to look. There is a black feather and coins on the crib. Jess is pregnant with a demon baby. The power suddenly goes out. Brad urges Jess to get out while he faces the entity alone. Peter appears behind him. And we hear a loud struggle. Brad has been stabbed by the ghost and is gravely injured. Peter finishes him off. Jess is hiding in a closet. She couldn't make it out in time. Peter finds her easily. Jess blacks out, and wakes up in a hospital bed. She is no longer pregnant. She freaks out, asking for her baby and Brad. The doctors restrain and sedate her. We see Peter, the evil cowboy. He kicks his feet up and enjoys the fruits of his labor.